Hello and thanks for staying with us on People, Politics and Power on your channel of choice, Africa Independent Television. My name is Imoni Amarire. When Nigeria has turned 57 years, the subdued celebrations that attended Nigeria's, well, you might say, 57th independence birthday, independence anniversary, is still very much in the air, even after the day, that's October 1, that was set aside for such celebrations. Our Nigerians had no choice, in spite of the hard times, but to mark the day. It was on October 1, 1960, precisely 57 years ago, that the Union Jack was lowered. That was the day the British rule over the territory called Nigeria was terminated, bringing to an end the long-drawn anti-colonial struggle. It was the day that the labors of our heroes past became manifest and real.
If Nigerian leaders and our British partners are to prove themselves worthy of their trust, now is the time for us solemnly and truly to dedicate ourselves to seeking the greatest good of the greatest number of our people in Nigeria. It is to this end that my colleagues and I pledge ourselves. The first main task of the conference is to resolve those problems which defied solutions in 1957 and to evolve for Nigeria a constitution of which both the British and the Nigerian peoples can be proud. The second is to get Her Majesty's government to agree to April 2nd, 1960 as the target date for Nigeria's independence. Independence for Nigeria in 1960 is imperative. But independence for Nigeria as a corporate entity is not enough. The peoples of Nigeria must at the same time be guaranteed their freedom.
When we hear the world crying out for peace, we may receive the inspiration to deal with these intractable problems and be able really to devote all our resources to the advancement of mankind by applying those eternal truths which will inevitably persist long after we ourselves are utterly forgotten. Thank you, Mr. President.
The independence of Nigeria was doggedly fought and barely won. During our protracted battles, some of our heroes and heroines, some were incarcerated, some lost their jobs, some sacrificed their fortunes, some were ostracized, while some were victimized and made to suffer indignity because they dared to demand freedom for Nigeria in our lifetime. Therefore, we must jealously guard our freedom with our lives if need be.
On reflection, in 57 years of nationhood, Nigerians have gone through some vertical and horizontal developmental stages, leaving many to wonder if there is really anything to celebrate. Now, you will recall that only 6 years after independence, Nigeria witnessed the first coup d'etat, which claimed the lives of some anti-colonial agitators and some prominent politicians. This was followed by a counter-coup with a consequential civil war which lasted for 30 long months and claimed well over 2 million lives. General Yakubu Gowon was 27 years old when he led Nigeria through the civil war, which ended in January 1970. Now, 4 years after, General Gowon was removed in a bloodless coup. Nigeria went through several coups d'etats and military dictatorships with a short spell of democratic dispensation, superintended over by Alhaji Shehu Shagari in 1979. It was again cut short by another military incursion in the twilight of 1983 by Generals Muhammadu Buhari and Tunde Idiagbon. That again began a relay of military coups, 3 in quick succession, until 1999, when General Abdul Salami Abubakar terminated the military incursions into governance and handed over power to Olusegun Obasanjo as a democratically elected president. Having been military head of state between 1976 and 1979, the long stretch of military coups have left many people to continue to imagine if we still feel the vestiges of dictatorship in governance, even after 18 long years of unbroken democratic rule. Now, all through history, from 1960 to date, the economy, that is the Nigerian economy, has been at the receiving end, especially typified by the recession from which Nigeria is gradually recovering. The political landscape has also been dominated by uncertainty. Where did we get it wrong? As a people and as a nation, what is the way forward? Those are the issues we want to reflect on people, politics, and power. And I have joining me in the studio Dr. Mutila Olashukbo. He is a senior lecturer in the Department of Political Science and International Relations of the University of Abuja, here in the nation's capital. Dr. Mutila, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
All right. It is a known fact that agitations by different groups have dominated Nigeria's political landscape, even from the pre-colonial era. The development has threatened the Nigerian project to its foundations. In his Independence Day speech, President Muhammadu Buhari strongly condemned those who have compromised on Nigeria's unity. Apart from President Buhari, Nigerian youths have joined the crusade for a united, indivisible, indissoluble Nigeria. Now let's take a listen to the president and some of the youths.
Recent calls on restructure, quite proper and a legitimate debate, has let in highly irresponsible groups to call for dismemberment of the country. We cannot and we will not allow such advocacy. As a younger officer, I took part from the beginning to the end in our tragic civil war, costing about 2 million lives, resulting in fearful destruction and untold suffering. Those who are agitating for a rerun were not born by 1967 and have no idea of the horrendous consequences of the civil conflict which we went through. I am very disappointed that the responsible leaders of these communities do not warn their hot-headed youth what the country went through. Those who were there should tell those who were not there the consequences of such folly.
What we did today is historical in the sense that we brought bikers from every club to ride for the unity of Nigeria. We are riding against hate, we are riding against injustice, we are riding against tyranny, but we are also riding for unity. That's the significance of today.
Nigeria of our dream. The Nigeria we need is the united, indissoluble, and cohesive Nigeria, which guarantees equity, fairness, justice, and prosperity for its citizens. That is our focus on people, politics, and power. It is fresh, insightful, impactful. It's a must-watch. People, politics, and power on AIT. Join us to build bridges of unity.
Well, the Nigeria Labour Congress, the NLC, on Monday renewed its call for the federal government to set up a platform that will facilitate dialogue on Nigeria's many challenges. The Labour body spoke at its annual Independence Day Symposium and rally here in the nation's capital, Abuja.
Devolution of more powers and resources to the state can only make sense if there is good governance. Because the fact is also very obvious. Despite the bailout, despite the Paris Club reform, and despite a lot of intervention, the challenge, especially in some of these tiers of government, is actually lack of accountability. And particularly, we can refer to many states, which is not because of resources, but essentially because also their priority is not about how to make the country work, and also how to make people the center point of our policy.
Welcome back. Let's move on now to our interview, and we have very much in the studio Dr. Muyiwa Olasupo. He is a senior lecturer in the University of Abuja here in the nation's capital. He actually teaches political science and international relations. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure to be here.
57 years of independence, 57 years of nationhood.
Yep.
A 57-year-old man, many will say, has gained maturity. After 57 years, is Nigeria a matured state?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I would like to start by trying to distinguish between a nationhood and to be the 57 years as a human being. 57 years is actually a very interesting year, a big year for an individual. You know, if an individual has not matured at 57, then it is very important to leap to conclusion that such an individual is a fool. But when it comes to nationhood, 57 years is still a very small years compared to other nations that have been in existence for the past 200 years. So we can say that Nigeria is still on the path of maturity. We can say that we have matured for the fact that if you look at all the events that has taken place in Nigeria, it's very important for us to look at this chronological analysis on daily basis. We shouldn't wait until October 1st before we assess ourselves on what we have done wrong in the past and try as much as possible to correct such abnormality in our polity so that we'll be able to move forward and try as much as possible to attain sustainable development that we have been aspiring for since 1960.
Yeah, I bet in 1960, October 1, 1960, there was hope. There was a lot of hope.
Yeah.
And many people, including our founding fathers, expressed a lot of hope, and that was seeing the kind of potentials that we had as a nation. What happened to those potentials?
That actually reminds me of what we knew about event that unfolded in the 60s. You know, in the 60s when Nigeria became independent, it was a great and exciting moment for the entire Nigerians then. And at independence, we had a very booming economy, to the extent that our economy was actually rated as one of the best in the Africa, even one of the best in the entire Caribbean and Latin America. And Nigeria was actually on the lead when it comes to developmental projects. You could recall that we had the first television station in the whole of Africa, Caribbean, Latin America, the first stadium, everything. We are on the path of development. But what happened? Within a decade, we lost all these opportunities due to all sorts of debilitating factors, which, if time permits us, we are going to look at them one after the other. It's always painful whenever we compare Nigeria with those countries that are historical peers of Nigeria. I'm referring to Malaysia in the 60s. You know, Malaysia attained its independence in 1957, while Nigeria attained its own in 1960. So the erudite scholars of political science consider the two countries as historical peers because we are independent from the same Great Britain. So at 60, Nigeria was far, far ahead of Malaysia and some other countries that we look up to today, to the extent that International Monetary Fund rated Nigerian GDP to have increment of 10% on yearly basis, which was very, very fantastic at that time. So at the end of the day, within a decade, Malaysia overtook Nigeria, and today Malaysia has become a developmental trend of Nigeria, while Nigeria still remain underdeveloped. Malaysia has actually transformed from a pariah nation to a developed society, whereas Nigeria is still crippling. In fact, we look up to Malaysia on so many things, including our education. Malaysia is actually teaching our children for us, which is very, very unthinkable as at 1960. So I look at all what happened immediately after our independence. You know, after that 1960, Nigeria easily succumbed to military rule, which took place as a result of a terrible and devastating military coup d'etat in 1966. As if it was not enough, a separatist movement also organized and formed a Biafra, Republic of Biafra. And the formation of a Republic of Biafra as a result of secession led to catastrophic and pervasive civil war, which took place for 3 terrible years of our nationhood. So within these years, we were taken back even to pre-colonial era, not even to the independence era any longer. We were taken back to a pre-colonial era due to the fact that so many things were destroyed, as it was captured in your prelude. More than 2 million Nigerians died, and we lost unimaginable properties at this moment of our independence. So, as if it was not enough, after the war, the 3 halves, which would have been effectively implemented to ensure that Nigeria is being brought back into on its track of a sustainable development, were not effectively implemented. It was messed up due to the corruption and some other debilitating factors in Nigeria. So a new constitution was written in 1979, and Nigeria was returned to a republic. That was Second Republic. But what happened? Within 4 years, this particular republic was short-lived as military struck again. And since then, we had a military interregnum, which took place for about 3 decades, until 1999, when Nigeria now ushered in a newly democratically elected government amidst turbulent socioeconomic and political conditions resulting from the several years of military dictatorship. However, today, in spite of the fact that after 57 years of independence and after almost 17 years of uninterrupted democracy, I can still tell you that Nigeria is still experiencing serious and pervasive problems in its politics and governance. So what could have been the problem? I try as much as possible to meditate on what those things that we have done wrong. Number one.
Those are the ones you describe as debilitating problems.
Factors,
okay.
Yes. Number one, we have not been able to implement people's-oriented policy right from independence. Remember, we had a first National Development Plan in 1963. Later on, we switched into Second National Development Plan, Third National Development Plan, even the fourth one, which was not allowed to see the light of the day. Apart from those plans, we also had visions. You remember Vision 2000, Vision 2010, and Vision 2020 now. You know, we had a series of reforms, but after we analyze all these visions, plans, and reforms, what I'm able to discover is that in spite of the so-called rigorous implementation of all these reforms, there have been unmitigated disasters on Nigerians. None of this reform has actually been translated into the reality of what should be for Nigerians. So we got it wrong in that we are unable to implement policy that will impact positively on many Nigerians. Our policy implementation has been elitist. if you look at it from 1960 to date, you could recall that even the policy implementation has been benefiting only the few in the society. So we got it wrong in that aspect. Number two, we find it extremely difficult to restore trust among ourselves as a nation. The pre-colonial government actually planted the seed of discord in our midst, and these suspicions were still with us at independence. What I expected our political leaders to do immediately they attain independence for this country is to do what is needful then to restore national integration by all means. We shouldn't wait until this catastrophic civil war struck before we now start talking about national integration. We actually needed national integration at independence at 60s. But we didn't do that. What we allowed ourselves to be engrossed with was acrimonious politics, if you recall. So that actually led to suspicions. So we didn't trust ourselves. And that is lingering on up to now. The tripod of Nigeria, I'm talking about the Hausa, Fulani, Yorubas, and Igbos. I can tell you that it is only at top level they could see themselves as one. And what will make them to be one is when corruption is involved. That will definitely unite all of them. Nobody talks about ethnicity. When it's come to corruptions, they talk about their own personal benefit, you know. But when you come down to the lowest ebbs of the society, I'm talking about the masses, you could see the way and manner in which this disintegration ethnicity is actually waxing stronger. They use all sorts of sentiment at that level. So we fail to restore trust in our society. That's another problems. Then the third one.
Yes.
Okay, if you ask me to count, I will count and count and count.
But maybe we should take them one after the other, because you seem to have packed so much into this your intervention. Where some Nigerians, political scientists, political watchers, and social critics have said that Nigeria's development was arrested at a stage.
Yes.
And you seem to corroborate that with all these policies, yes, that you have talked about. And let's take them one after the other.
Okay.
We have talked about the colonial heritage.
Yes.
We have talked of military intervention in our body politics.
Yes.
We have talked of a debilitating civil war.
Yes.
And we have talked of policy implementation
Yes,
and
sir.
all of that. Which of these would you consider more fundamental to Nigeria's arrested development?
As a matter of fact, to me, the very first one that actually begat all other problems was the military intervention into Nigerian politics.
So we could easily have overcome the colonial heritage,
yes,
if the military had not come.
Exactly. Because as at that time, they have understood the fact, I'm talking about our foundation leaders, Obafemi Awolowo, Sardauna of Sokoto, Ahmadu Bello, and Nnamdi Azikiwe. They have understood the kind of situation they find themselves. And they were also doing everything possible at that time to restore unity, to restore trust among Nigerians, so that everybody would not be suspicious of one another. So that was what they were doing at independence before the military struck. That military intervention, the first military intervention in 1966, was unexpected and it was unnecessary because there was no reason for it at all. So with that, military have been given the opportunity that politics was sweet and they refused to go. And it was the military that bastardized our political system. I'm talking about the federalism. Today, we are agitating for restructuring. That agitation wouldn't have been necessary. That effort we are spending on clarion call for restructuring we would have channeled it to some other issues if federalism has been practiced the way it should. So with military intervention in Nigerian politics, the federalism that we started in the pre-colonial era, particularly during the McPherson Constitution of 1946, were actually frustrated and led to what we know as a quasi-federalism. We were practicing unitary system in federal system. So because of the fact that the power were concentrated on the Supreme Provisional Council, I'm talking about the military head of state then. So with that, we thought that was the normal thing. You could even recall that at a stage, the first military head of state then, Aguiyi-Ironsi, attempted to implement a decree that will make Nigerians to be on the path of unification. I'm talking about implementing unity system of government, if you remember very well. So that particular decree was eventually formulated and implemented. So for us today, Nigeria cannot be seen practically as a federal state. Nigeria is actually a unitary state and claimed to be a federal state.
Though your argument is that the military intervention seemed to have altered Nigeria's federal nature and structure.
Exactly.
And that has had an adverse effect on our developmental progress up to today.
Exactly.
But opponents of that school of thought will argue that we have had enough time after the military departure from power to have corrected all of these anomalies and then put Nigeria on the path to a truly federal state and to true greatness as a nation.
Exactly. Actually, when you look at the way and manner we restored democracy in Nigeria in 1999, you will agree with me that it was already prepared, as if we were in haste to experience democracy. And it was understandable at that time because of a series of events that took place before 1999. You could recall the death of MKO, which nearly split the country. You could recall the death of General Abacha himself, which was also a very terrible blow to our polity. You could see all these events were understandable that if care was not taken then, Nigeria would have been disintegrated at that time because of the tempo of Nigerians, particularly the Yorubas and the Hausas at that time. And it was in the midst turbulent socioeconomic and political condition that Nigeria ushered in newly democratically elected government in 1999. However, I would have expected the government in Nigeria since that 1999 to have done what is needful in restructuring Nigeria into real, practicable and pragmatic federal state that we ought to be. But constitutionally, we may not be able to do that because the 1999 constitution had a lot of lacunas. There were constitutional lacunas which need to be taken care of, which need to be amended before anything of such could take place.
Couldn't we have done that in 18 years of democratic?
Of course, we could have done that. You could recall that former President Olusegun Obasanjo made effort in 2005, 2006 or thereabout to organize a constitutional review committee through Confab and the rest. But because of one agenda, because of the fact that he couldn't achieve his own fundamental aim of convening such constitutional review, the whole exercise was actually jettisoned. That actually made us not to have the opportunity of reviewing the Constitution, because the 1999 Constitution is actually due for review. It is not a constitution that we should be operating with in the 21st century. And because of the system Nigeria is operating with, we are operating presidential system of government. And a presidential system of government, our constitution is rigid. When you have a rigidity of constitution, it is expected that the amendment of such constitution is not an easy task. So I'm using this opportunity to urge the 8th National Assembly to do the needful and facilitate the effort of review this constitution before their tenure lapse.
Are we being honest and genuine about reviewing this constitution? Because, like you said, this is the 8th National Assembly.
Yep.
The 7th, the 6th, the 5th, and even the 4th had an opportunity to do a lot more fundamental work on the constitution. Are we seeing personal interest and agenda playing out here in the review, in the amendment of the Constitution?
You know, earlier on I was trying to enumerate all the debilitating factors that actually frustrated and still frustrating Nigerian developmental trajectory. But you cut me short. I would have mentioned that impunity is one of them. You see, the current political actors in Nigeria, what I've understood about them is that anything that will not favor them personally, they don't seem to be interested in it. And I see Nigerian current political leadership in a very different way. Currently, Nigeria is actually characterized by the dominance of unstable personalistic leadership who haven't pursued their selfish, nefarious, pervasive, and even atrocious interests at the detriment of many Nigerians. That's why you see that in most cases, if they come up with any policy, that policy is designed to favor them. And anything that will not favor them as an individual, they will not pick interest. When the issue of constitutional review comes up, what they are trying to inject and incorporate in such process is creation of state, particularly the governors. And all those who are aspiring to be governors, everybody want to have more state. You could see the way people are agitating for creation of state. Unfortunately, even the current 36 states we have in the federation, many of them were not viable. Tell me, how many states are viable that will now be asking for creation of more states? What are we going to do with the creation of more states? What are we going to do with it when the one that we have on ground were not even viable? Many of them cannot even pay salary, when they cannot even carry out any important project. So why must we be having many states? And that is what will interest the governors and other people that are aspiring to be governors. You see, by the time we put aside our selfish interest, by the time we stop doing things, implement policy, carrying out public offices based on our own caprice and whims, I think that's the time we can say that we are on the path of sustainable development.
The cry for restructuring, I mean, restructuring seems to be the swan song these days.
Yes.
For many of those who are agitating for restructuring, it seems as if it's a magic wand. Once you carry out restructuring, Nigeria's challenges will go away.
Exactly.
Is this a correct perspective?
It is not. In fact, I can emphatically say that many of the people agitating for restructuring today, they don't even understand what restructuring means. That is my challenge with some Nigerians, some analysts. When you talk about the restructuring, if you ask Nigerians now, we have various perspectives about restructuring. An Hausa man has his own different meaning of restructuring. A Yoruba man has his own different perspective. If you ask an Igbo man to come and tell you, what do you mean by restructuring? He will not have anything tangible to say. That is the problem. But in my own opinion, restructuring simply means clarion call to restore to federalism. And these are the things that the current government can actually do without necessarily organizing another talk show that some people are clamoring for. You know, Confab has now become an industry that everybody wants to hit out of it. Of course, if you have been nominated as a delegate, you could be rest assured that certain millions of naira will definitely come to your pocket. So I'm not blaming those who are agitating for Confab, that we need to come together, we need to dialogue, we need to talk. What are you talking about? What is there that you want to talk about that people have not talked about in the past? All we need to do is for the government to start doing the needful. We don't need to call any talk show for us to do what is expected.
What is that needful?
Thank you so much. I want to tell the current government to make sure that the implementation of federal character principle, which has been there for a very long time, need to be resuscitated. That implementation need to be resuscitated. It seems we have deviated completely when it comes to federal character principles. The federal government need to ensure that federal character principle is being brought back to life. If we do that, it means we are going to ensure politics of inclusion. And based on my own political understanding of cosmopolitan political system, which emphasizes on inclusivity in governance, that doesn't It doesn't happen in Nigeria nowadays. There's nothing like inclusivity in the government. So government need to ensure that each and every individual Nigerians is seen as a stakeholder in a Nigerian project. So if that one is restored, I believe it's going to palliate all these tensions to some extent. Number two, the issue of devolution of power among all the tiers of government need to be revisited by the current administration. You see, these are the things that you don't need to organize any talk show. It is something you can do. You have the executive order to do all this. Make sure that what is due for the local government is given to the local government. What is due for the state is given to the state. The state must not be seen as a beggar to the federal government, while the local government must not be seen as an appendage of state government, because all these constitutional devolution of power among the three tiers of government had actually been truncated in Nigerian polity today. That's why you see that in some local government, for the past 17 years, they've never had election more than once or twice.
Will devolution of powers to the tiers of government
yes,
or levels of government,
yes,
will it restore Nigeria to
of course,
to its, well, what you might call in quote true federalism?
Of course, because what federalism is, according to K.C. Well, is a system of government in which the federating unit, the component of the federating unit, comes together to share power for the purpose of sustainable development. If every individual tiers of government knows its responsibility as it's been clearly spelled out by the Constitution, you know, the power of all these tiers of government has been spelled out by the Constitution. We have exclusive list which comprises all the power that need to be carried out, whether by the federal government. We have concurrent list. The concurrent list actually consists of power that was specifically meant for the state government and those that could be shared by the state government and the federal government. Then we also have residual list. Residual list comprises residual power for the local government. So by the time everybody knows its limits, knows its powers, and you don't go out of your boundary, you do things within the conditionality prescribed by the constitution of your country, constitution of the land, I believe we will definitely restore ourselves back to federalism. And it's a gradual process.
Yeah, the current constitution review process going on at the National Assembly and at the state houses of assembly.
Yep.
Can it not do this which you are advocating?
Of course, that's exactly, that's why I said earlier on.
Any fresh conference?
No.
Even the executive interference?
I've actually cleared that we don't need any confer, we don't need any talk show, because me, I don't call it confer, I call it talk show. Just to come and talk and get something in your pocket. Just like I said earlier on, it has become an industry. That's why you see many people, if you ask, what do you think can solve Nigerian problem? They say, let's come and discuss. Let's come and talk. What are you talking about? What are you discussing? These are the things that government should do. Constitutional process, the amendment of the constitution is ongoing. Let's facilitate. What are those that is delaying it? Why can't he be hastening? Why can't he be serious about it?
So was the president right when he said in his Independence Day broadcast that such agitations and calls for restoration should be channeled
to the National Assembly, to the representatives
and National Assembly?
Yes, he was actually right, and he spoke the mind of many Nigerians, particularly the intellectuals who knows about Nigerian project, who also meant well for Nigerians. You don't need to call for secession before you make your grievances known to the government. You don't need to disrupt the peace of the society before people know that you are marginalized. What you need to do is to present your grievances. You have your representatives, because the issue of marginalization is even a contentious issue. Who is marginalizing who? That's the point. Who is marginalizing who? When you are in government, when you have your representative there, when you have the person you ascribe certain respect for in government, you don't feel marginalized, even though your area, your family, your relative are not taken care of. But the moment somebody you detest comes to power, then you start shouting marginalization. So who is marginalizing who? So the point is, let us make our grievances known clearly. Let it be spelled out. What is our problem? If you ask those people who are agitating for Republic of Biafra now, I can tell you that you will get millions of answers about what do they want to do about Biafra without have any congruent response about what actually they mean by Biafra. They don't even know anything about Biafra they are talking about. Because as far as I'm concerned, Biafra is dead as far back as 1970. So if anybody is talking about Biafra now, he's wasting his time, wasting his energy. If anybody is talking about Odua Republic now, it's actually suffering from diarrhea of mouth. So all these things cannot hold any water. What we need to do is to come together. If you have any grievances, go to the legitimate channel. You have your own representative in the House of Assembly. You have it in House of Representatives. You have it in the Senate. Why can't you try as much as possible to organize yourself within your constituency and present your grievances to your representatives and wait if you refuse to do what you expected of him? You have the right, you have the civic responsibility to do the same they are doing to Dino Melaye, although we are waiting to see how it's going to unfold in the next few weeks.
All right. Now, Doctor, let's look at some other arguments that have been made. Now, there are those who say that restructuring will not solve Nigeria's problems like magic, yes, as those who are canvassing for it seem, yes, to suggest. Yes. For instance, Professor Patu Tomi, a development economist, yep, and Bishop Matthew Asankuka have both argued that restructuring will not solve Nigeria's fundamental problems, but that what will and what is needed is good governance. Yes. Whether for those who are asking for creation of more states, whether those who are asking for a return to the 1963 Constitution, which prescribes regionalism, or in fact those who are asking for a breakup of the country. These are not the challenges of Nigeria, but that what is required is good governance. Yep. Well, because if even if you break Nigeria into 100 states, or 6 regions, or 20 regions, as the case may be, if good governance is not there, even at the lowest of the levels, that we will not get out of what we are, yes, at the moment. Is that
I actually agree with those opinion leaders. And that has been my position all these years about Nigeria as a nation. You see, it is highly unfortunate that today, many Nigerians find it extremely difficult to differentiate between good governance and democratic dividends. We've not been able to differentiate between the two. They are not the same things. When we talk about the good governance, it is what is expected of a government, whether democratic government or military government, in the sense that you are expected to deliver service to your people. You are expected to provide service for your people. And when you do this, that will definitely bring about good governance. Could you believe that there are some country in some country that we tag as autocratic government, but yet there's good governance in such countries. And there are some countries that have been tagged as a democratic government, but they don't have good governance. So, in my own view, the issue is, if you are to achieve good governance, it means the attitude of our leaders has to change. Presently, the composition of leadership in Nigeria, with this current attitude, I don't think we can attain good governance. That's why those who are calling for restructuring of the country, they should have channeled their energy to cover the restructuring of attitude of our political leaders. It is the attitude that is very important. Today, our attitude is terrible. Today, we see government as a quickest way of making money. When you assemble Nigerian millionaires, the so-called millionaires in Nigeria, when you assemble them, you realize that 90% of them have actually held political offices in the past. So how will you consider them as a rich person? It means they are only rich with Nigerian funds. That is the problem we have. Why can't we change our attitudes? Why can't we make sure that we develop a system that will checkmate the excesses of each and every one of us? Why are we not stopping this impunity? Why is it that if a person has been charged as a corrupt person, why is it that we always make sure that he doesn't face the wrath of the law. That is what is obtainable now. In as much as we don't do this, forget about good governance. It will not happen. So when there's no good governance, then the country cannot move.
There's also the school of thought that says that those who are agitating and actually championing the cause for restructuring have an eye on more resources for perhaps the smaller units that may be carved out when this happens. Now, what is the correlation between more resources and development?
You don't necessarily talk about resources before you now talk about restructuring. And that also about the level of insincerity of those people that are agitating for restructuring. And the issue is resources at times may not necessarily determine the development of a nation. If it is the quantity of the resources, Nigeria will have been the best country in the world due to the fact that Nigeria is endowed with multifarious and multitudinal resources. But unfortunately, these resources and the nature of Nigeria now, to me, is paradoxical. In spite of all these resources, we've not been able to translate these resources into reality that will bring about sustainable development in the country. Recently, I traveled to about 20 states in the Federation. And during my trip, I got to know that Nigeria is even endowed more than I think. Beyond my imagination, I got to know that. And that actually made me to ask a very germane question about what is actually Nigerian problem. What is our problem? Look at the resources, but yet we refuse to be developed. So that actually made me to leap to the conclusion that it is not about resources. It's about how you have been able to manage these resources. Look at Japan, for instance. What are the resources of Japan? In terms of human resources, in terms of material resources, what Japan has, Japan is zero. But they used their human resources to transform their society. The same thing applicable to South Africa that we've been considered as our competitors in the African region, even though it will be very unimaginable for anybody to be comparing Nigeria with South Africa. As far as I'm concerned, South Africa had actually gone far ahead of us. South Africa has no as much as material resources as we have in Nigeria. We can't. Nigerian resources multiply that of South Africa in many folds. But what is happening now? South Africa is actually becoming more and more influenced to the extent that before you know it, South Africa will soon become an hegemon of Africa because of its influence. So why Nigeria is still sleeping? So it's not about resources. It's about how you manage these resources. So I want to call on Nigerians. And that's why the issue of federalism is very important. You could see in the 60s, when all these regions were given the opportunity to tap their resources and make use of it, explore it, and make use of it by themselves. All you need to do is just to remit maybe certain percentage to the federal to make the federal goals, because federal government is to protect the territorial integrity of the entire country. When it comes to the issue of defense and bilateral relations, that should be for the federal government. But when it comes to the issue of discovering the resources, making best out of the resources, it's for the people, because resources belong to the people. The federated unit are the one that's supposed to be doing that. How will you, if Niger Delta region were given the opportunity to explore their resources by themselves, I believe they will be able to manage it better.
Doesn't that support the theory of that school of thought that if the resources are left to the states or to the regions where such resources are
what I'm saying.
that it would enhance their development?
It depends on the level of sincerity of those people who are proposing such. You understand? It is the level of sincerity. Although it could be, in as much as the federal government could have even done the same, the successive government could have done the same since independence, since oil was discovered in 1956. I was watching a program just yesterday about Oloibiri, where the oil was firstly discovered in 1956. It was stated in the early 2000s that they were going to build a research center at that Oloibiri. I can tell you up to date, no research center has been built. You could see that's a promise failed, and there are so many of such failures in our system today, which means had it been the successive government in Nigeria have been doing the needful, Nigeria would have been rubbing soldiers with the so-called developed countries in the world today. Nigeria wouldn't have been crippling at 57. Nigeria will have attained sustainable development. Nigeria will have been able to feed itself. The issue of acute unemployment, blatant corruptions, and of course, unimaginable spate of insecurity wouldn't have been our gains of, after 57 years.
Okay. All right. Dr. Mutila Olasupo has been my guest. He is a lecturer in the Department of Political Science and International Relations at the University of Abuja, here in Abuja, the Nigerian capital. And we've been looking at Nigeria at 57 and, of course, the way forward. What does the future hold for us? Well, he says that future lies in the hands of Nigerians, you and I. So go out there and do your very best for Nigeria. Attitudinal change, that is what he's advocating. Attitudinal restructuring, that's what he's saying will do the magic. My name is Imoni Amare. Please join us again when we bring you a fresh edition of People, Politics, and Power. Dr. Olasupo, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sir. It's my pleasure to be here.